I need to start this differently because the situation isn't the same anymore. Not even close. Last time, this was an experiment. Something uncertain but still controlled. A calculated risk that felt manageable. Now it's not that anymore. Now it's real. And I don't mean that in a dramatic way. I mean that in the most practical sense possible. Because since the last video, one of the 4 YouTube channels I bought is gone. Completely gone. Not demonetized, not restricted, not temporarily suspended. Permanently removed from YouTube. And the way it happened wasn't loud or chaotic. It was quiet. Almost too quiet. Just an email sitting there like any other notification until you read the one line that actually matters. We have permanently removed your channel from YouTube due to violations of spam, deceptive practices, and scams policy. And just like that, it was over. The channel I built part of this entire strategy around disappeared. The one I assumed would carry the downside risk if things didn't go as planned. The one that looked like stability. Gone. I appealed it. Of course I did. Not strategically, but emotionally. Because there's always that moment where you believe it's a mistake, that it'll get reversed, that someone will look at it again and fix it. But the second email came, and it was even shorter, even colder. We won't be putting your channel back up on YouTube. No explanation, no path forward, just a confirmation that it's over. And that's when something shifted for me, because that channel wasn't just one of the 4. That was Insider Military, the anchor. The one with the most traffic, the most authority, the one I assumed would stabilize everything else. Before it got deleted, it was doing around 107,000 views in 28 days and generating over 6,000 watch hours. Even though the revenue was low, around $22, it still felt consistent, predictable, like something I could rely on. Now it's 0. Not declining, not trending down, just 0. And that changes everything. Because now the portfolio isn't 4 channels anymore, it's 3. But the cost structure didn't change. The lit expenses didn't disappear. I'm still spending between $2,000 and $500 every single month on editors, writers, and systems. That money still leaves my account every month regardless of performance. But now there's one less channel contributing anything to offset that. So February becomes the first real month where I'm not looking at this as an experiment anymore. I'm looking at it as a system under pressure. And when I opened the analytics for February 2026 across the remaining channels, I didn't look for potential or optimism. I just looked at the numbers as they are. Starting with Dark Lore, which on the surface still looks stable, still looks like it's holding its ground, but the February data tells a different story. 12, 688 total views, 377.7 watch hours, 29 new subscribers, and $24.34 in estimated revenue. And YouTube clearly labels this as down across the board. Around 6% less views compared to January, 37% less watch time, 46% fewer subscribers, and 27% less revenue. That's not a collapse, but it's something more dangerous. It's quiet decline, the kind that doesn't trigger panic but slowly moves you in the wrong direction. When you look at the graph, you can see it. Small spikes, then flat lines, then slight drops. Nothing dramatic, but nothing that suggests growth either. And the real issue isn't even those numbers. It's what's behind them. This channel still doesn't have a strong base of returning viewers. It still depends on new traffic, occasional spikes, and algorithmic luck, which means every upload is still starting from 0 instead of building on something. Then there's Cinema V2, and this is where things get more uncomfortable. Because February didn't just underperform, it exposed how weak the foundation actually is. 11. 845 total views, 133 watch hours, 21 new subscribers, and $10.74 in revenue. And that number matters, $10 for an entire month of uploads. When you compare it to January, it's significantly worse. Around 22% drop in views, 58% drop in watch time, and 44% drop in revenue. And this is with content still being uploaded consistently. The system didn't stop, the effort didn't stop, but the output collapsed. When you look deeper, the pattern becomes obvious. Most of the traffic is coming from shorts. Fast, reactive, trend-based content. Videos that generate views, but don't build anything long-term. Some of them get decent retention, even over 80% on certain clips, but that attention doesn't convert. It doesn't turn into long-form watch time. It doesn't build loyalty, and it doesn't create returning viewers. It just creates temporary spikes that disappear as quickly as they come. And that's why the channel feels active but isn't actually growing. Then there's Invention Flex, which is the only channel showing something different. February numbers: 27, 833 views, 1.4K watch hours, 320 new subscribers, and $57.92 in revenue. And even though views are slightly down compared to January, revenue is actually up by around 17%, and watch time is holding steady. More importantly, subscriber growth is significantly higher than the other channels. 320 compared to 29 on Dark Lore and 21 on Cinema V2. And that gap isn't random, it's behavioral. It shows that people are not just watching, they're choosing to come back. When you look at the content, it makes sense. Longer educational videos like History of Computer, pulling over 14,000 views, History of Electricity, approaching 4,000, and even smaller uploads still contributing consistently. Plus shorts that actually connect to the main theme instead of random trends. This is the only channel that feels like it's building something instead of reacting to the algorithm. And when you zoom out and combine everything, the reality becomes impossible to ignore. Across all 3 remaining channels in February, total views are roughly around 52,000. Total revenue is under $100, while monthly costs are still sitting between $2,000 and $2,500. That gap isn't theoretical, it's real. It's happening every single month, money going out regardless of performance. And what makes this even more serious is that this is after losing the largest channel, the one that used to contribute over 100,000 views on its own, which means the system didn't just underperform, it shrank. And now everything that remains has to work harder just to stay in the same position. This is the moment where the story changes. Episode 1 was about possibility, about what could happen, about the idea of turning YouTube channels into digital assets. But episode 2 is about reality, about what actually happens when those assets don't behave the way you expected, when one disappears overnight, when the others don't grow fast enough, and when the numbers stop being theory and start becoming pressure. Because I can't look at this the same way anymore. I can't pretend that views equal progress, or that uploading consistently guarantees growth, or that having a system automatically creates results. The data doesn't support that, and ignoring it would be the real mistake. Now, the question isn't whether this was a good idea or a bad one. The question is what happens next. Because from this point forward, every decision matters more than it did before. Every upload, every dollar spent, every channel kept or cut. And for the first time since this started, this doesn't feel like an experiment anymore. It feels like something that needs to work. And soon. At this point, I wish I could say there was a clear solution, something obvious I could point to and say, this is the problem and this is how I fix it. But that's not how this works. Because what I'm dealing with right now isn't one problem, it's layers of problems stacked on top of each other. And the more I sit with the data, the more I realize something uncomfortable. I didn't just buy underperforming channels, I bought misunderstood systems. And that difference matters more than I expected, because underperformance can be fixed with better execution. But misunderstanding leads to repeating the same mistakes, just with more effort, more time, and more money. And that's exactly where this becomes dangerous. Because if I keep treating this like a growth problem, I'll try to solve it the way most people do. Upload more, improve thumbnails, test different titles, adjust pacing, do all the surface level optimizations that feel productive. But the data I'm looking at doesn't suggest a surface problem. It suggests a structural one. And if the structure is wrong, then improving the surface only makes the problem harder to see. The first thing I had to confront was something I completely misjudged from the beginning. I overvalue views. I saw channels pulling thousands of views, some even tens of thousands. And I assumed that meant something real was happening underneath. That there was an audience, that there was momentum, that there was something to build on. But now I understand that views without context are almost meaningless. Because what actually matters isn't how many people watch. It's how they behave after they watch. Do they come back? Do they watch more than one video? Do they recognize the channel the next time they see it? Do they trust it enough to click again without hesitation? And when I look at Dark Lore and Cinema V2 through that lens, the answer becomes very clear. They don't. Not in a consistent way, not in a way that compounds over time. And that changes how I see everything. Because that means I didn't buy audiences. I bought moments. Temporary spikes of attention that never turned into anything sustainable. That explains why Dark Lore feels stable but isn't growing. 688 views sounds fine on the surface. It doesn't look broken. It doesn't trigger urgency. But when you look deeper, most of those viewers are new. Most of them don't return. Most of them don't build any relationship with the content. So every upload is still starting from zero. Every video has to earn attention again from scratch. And that's not how real growth works. Growth comes from accumulation, from building on what already exists. And that simply isn't happening here. It's not collapsing. But it's not progressing either. It's stuck in a loop of temporary attention. Cinema V2 takes that problem even further. Because not only does it lack returning viewers, it lacks identity. And I didn't fully see that before. I thought it was flexible. I thought covering different types of content would be an advantage, that it would allow the channel to adapt. But what I actually bought was confusion, a channel that doesn't know what it is. One video talks about a celebrity controversy. The next tries to explain something different. Then another leans into trends. And from the outside, that looks like activity. But from the algorithm's perspective, it looks like inconsistency. And when the algorithm is confused, it doesn't experiment. It limits, it reduces distribution, it becomes cautious. And that's exactly what I'm seeing in the February numbers. Lower reach, lower watch time, lower revenue, even though uploads are still happening. Even though effort hasn't dropped. And that's when something clicked for me. Consistency doesn't create growth. Clarity does. Without clarity, consistency just scales confusion. And that leads to another mistake I made. One that feels obvious now, but wasn't at the time. I underestimated how fragile these channels actually were. I treated them like assets, like something that had inherent value just because it existed and had history. But YouTube doesn't work like that. History doesn't guarantee future performance. Momentum doesn't carry forward automatically. And in some cases, like in Cyto Military, it doesn't just reset, it disappears completely. That experience changed how I look at everything else. Because if one channel can go to zero overnight, then none of them are truly stable. They're all conditional, dependent on rules, policies, and systems that I don't fully control. And that doesn't mean YouTube is random. It means I was too confident in things I didn't own. Then there's the third mistake, the one that's probably the most expensive. I thought systems equal safety. I thought having editors, writers, and a structured workflow would create stability. That if I built the right process, the results would follow. But systems don't fix weak foundations, they amplify them. If the direction is unclear, systems just produce more unclear content. If the audience isn't loyal, systems just generate more one-time viewers. And that's exactly what I built. A machine that works efficiently but not effectively. From the outside, everything looks right. Content is being uploaded. Thumbnails are clean. Titles are optimized. The process is running. But the outcome doesn't match the effort. And when that happens, you have to stop looking at what you're producing and start questioning why you're producing it in the first place. That's where the shift begins. Because now I'm not asking how do I grow these channels. I'm asking what actually makes a channel work. Not in theory, not in advice videos, but in the data I'm seeing right now. And the answer keeps coming back to the same thing. Returning viewers, not subscribers, not total views. Returning viewers. Because they're the only thing that compounds. They click faster, they watch longer, they create session depth, they signal trust to the algorithm. And when you have that, growth becomes more predictable. When you don't, everything becomes unstable. That's why Invention Flex stands out. Not because it's perfect, but because it shows early signs of that behavior. 833 views, 1.4K watch hours, 320 subscribers. Those numbers matter. But what matters more is what they represent. People are not just watching. They're choosing to engage. They're choosing to come back. The content has direction. It has consistency in topic. It has a clear identity. And because of that, it has something the other channels don't. Momentum. Not explosive, not viral, but real. And real momentum compounds over time. And this forces a different kind of thinking. Because now I can't treat all channels equally anymore. I can't spread effort evenly and hope everything improves together. That approach already failed. The data proved it. So now the strategy has to change. Not slightly, fundamentally. Because continuing the same approach isn't neutral, it's decline. Slow, quiet decline. That doesn't feel urgent until it's too late to reverse. And that's the part one can't ignore anymore. Because this isn't happening in isolation. This isn't just a YouTube project running in the background. This is connected to real money, real time, real consequences. Every month that passes, money leaves. Whether performance improves or not. That changes how I think about every decision from this point forward. Now it's not about maximizing potential. It's about maximizing probability. The probability that this actually works before the runway ends. That's a stricter standard than I started with. But it's also a more honest one. Because potential is easy to believe in. It's flexible. It doesn't demand proof. Probability is different. It's grounded in data. It forces you to confront what's actually happening, not what you hope will happen. And right now, the data is clear. Some things are working, some things are not. Treating them the same would be the biggest mistake I could make. If I keep doing that, then I'm not really making decisions, I'm avoiding them. And avoidance is expensive. Not immediately, but over time. And time is now the one thing I can't afford to waste. At some point, everything stops being abstract and becomes real. I think I've reached that point now. Not because of one dramatic event, but because of everything combined. The channel that got deleted. The numbers that didn't improve the way I expected. The gap between revenue and cost repeating every single month. And the realization that nothing is fixing itself. It's just continuing unless I actively change something. That's what shifts this entire situation, because up until now I could still frame this as an experiment, something I was testing, something I was exploring, something that needed time. But that framing doesn't hold anymore. Experiments don't usually involve this level of commitment, this level of cost, this level of consequence if things don't work out. And once you see that clearly, you can't go back. You can't pretend it's just content, or just analytics, or just a side project. Because it isn't. It's a system that either becomes sustainable or continues to drain resources. And right now, it's doing the second one. And what makes this heavier is that it's not happening in isolation. Because outside of this project, life is still moving forward. My wife is about to be out of work for a few months. The Shopify brand I invested in is still losing money. And those things don't pause while I figure this out. They continue. They add pressure. They reduce the margin for error. That's what turns this from a long-term experiment into something time-sensitive, something that needs results within a limited window, and that's when the question changes. Before, it was simple. Does this work? Now it's different. How long can this not work before it becomes a problem I can't ignore? And that's not a theoretical question, it's a practical one. Because every month has a cost attached to it. Every month without improvement shortens the time I have left to make meaningful changes. That's when I started thinking about failure differently. I used to believe failure in something like this would be obvious. Something you could clearly identify. Everything collapsing at once. Views dropping to zero. No growth. No engagement. Something that forces you to stop immediately. But that's not what this looks like. Failure here is subtle. It's gradual. It's numbers that don't improve enough. Channels that don't grow fast enough. Revenue that doesn't catch up to cost. And because it isn't dramatic, it's easy to tolerate. It's easy to justify. It's easy to say, this just needs more time. That's exactly what makes it dangerous. Because you can stay in that state longer than you should, convincing yourself that you're close to a breakthrough, when in reality, you're just delaying a decision. And that's the trap I can see clearly now. The trap of giving things more time without changing anything meaningful. Because time only works if the direction is correct, if the foundation is solid. If the system is already pointing toward growth. If those things aren't in place, time doesn't fix them. It just extends the period where nothing changes. That's why I had to ask myself something honestly. Without optimism, without bias, without trying to make it sound better than it is. If nothing changes, what happens? If I continue exactly as I have been, what happens? The answer wasn't complicated, it was simple. This doesn't sustain. Not with these numbers, not with these costs, not with this structure. And that answer isn't emotional. It's mathematical. Once you accept that, It forces a different kind of thinking. Now the focus isn't on what could happen, it's on what needs to happen. Those are two very different perspectives. One is passive, the other is active. One waits for improvement, the other creates it. That's where decisions come in. Real decisions, not adjustments, not small optimizations, but actual changes that alter the trajectory of what's happening. Because without that, everything stays the same. And staying the same is no longer an option. So I started looking at each channel differently, not as part of a portfolio, not as something I need to keep balanced, but as individual decisions that either justify their existence or don't. And when you do that, the clarity becomes uncomfortable, but necessary. Invention Flex is the only channel that clearly justifies continued focus, not because it's already successful, but because it shows behavior that can become success. 27. 833 views, 1.4K watch hours, 320 subscribers, $57.92 in revenue. But more importantly, content that people actually return to, videos that continue to perform, a direction that is consistent enough for the algorithm to understand and for viewers to recognize. That combination creates the possibility of compounding growth, not immediate, not explosive, but real. And that's the only thing in this entire system that currently shows that pattern. Dark lore becomes a different kind of decision because it's not failing, but it's not progressing either. That puts it in a position where doing nothing is effectively the same as going backwards. Because while it maintains a certain level of views, around 12,688 in February, and some level of revenue, $24.34, it doesn't build on itself. It doesn't create momentum. It doesn't increase its baseline, which means it either needs to change or it slowly becomes irrelevant, not all at once, but over time. And that kind of slow decline is harder to react to because it never feels urgent enough until it's already too late. Cinema V2 is the most difficult one because the data doesn't leave much room for interpretation. 11. 845 views, 133 watch hours, $10.74 in revenue. And that's with consistent uploads, consistent effort, ongoing cost. At some point, continuing something like that stops being a strategic decision. It becomes an emotional one because the only reason to keep it running in its current state is belief, not evidence. And belief without evidence can be expensive, especially when time and money are limited. That's where the hardest part of this comes in, because making the right decision doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it feels like giving up. Sometimes it feels like admitting something didn't work. Sometimes it feels like losing, but in reality, it's just reallocating focus to where it has the highest chance of producing a result. That's the perspective I have to maintain now, because if I don't, I risk holding on to things that don't serve the outcome I'm trying to reach. So the strategy changes. Not slightly, but fundamentally. Fewer videos, more intention. Not uploading because it's time to upload, but uploading because there's a clear reason for that video to exist. Stronger focus on long-form content that builds depth instead of surface-level attention. Reducing reliance on shorts where they don't contribute to long-term growth. And most importantly, prioritizing the channel that shows actual signals of compounding. Because spreading effort evenly is what led to this situation. And continuing that approach would only extend it. From this point forward, every decision has a clearer consequence. Every choice either moves things forward or keeps them where they are. There's no longer room to pretend that small improvements are enough. Because small improvements don't close a gap like this. They just slow down how quickly it becomes a problem. That's the reality I'm accepting now. Not everything I bought was worth what I paid. Not everything can be fixed. And not everything deserves more time. Accepting that isn't negative, it's necessary. Because without that clarity, I'd continue operating under assumptions that the data has already proven wrong. But at the same time, this isn't the point where I stop. Because there's still something here. Not across everything, but in specific parts of it. And that's enough to continue. But not in the same way as before. Not with the same mindset. Not with the same distribution of effort. This next phase is different. More focused, more deliberate, more aware of what actually matters, and less attached to what doesn't. That's why I'm still documenting this. Not because it's comfortable, not because it looks good, but because this is the part people don't usually show. The part where things are uncertain, where decisions are difficult, where outcomes aren't guaranteed. And that's where the real value is. Not in the result, but in the process of getting there. Because if you're watching this right now, you're not just watching a YouTube experiment, you're watching a decision play out in real time, with real stakes, real constraints, and no guaranteed outcome. And from this point forward, Everything that happens will come from what I choose to do next. Not what I planned, not what I expected, but what I actually execute. That's what makes this moment different. Because now there's no illusion left, no assumption that things will just improve over time, no belief that effort alone will solve everything. Now it's clear. Either this becomes something sustainable or it doesn't. And the difference between those two outcomes comes down to decisions, not ideas, not intentions, but actions. So the question is no longer whether this works. The question is whether I can make it work before time runs out. And that's the only question that matters now. If you've made it this far, you already understand this isn't just content. This is real risk, real money, real decisions playing out in real time. So if you want to see what happens next, whether this turns around or becomes a very expensive lesson, subscribe, stay close, and follow the next episode. Because from this point forward, every move matters.